show, we'll be discussing Budget Letter 20-12 that was sent out to departments earlier this month regarding state spending related to COVID-19. We'll also take you through the job aid that accompanied the letter, and we'll have a question and answer session with Department of Finance and Fiscal staff. So if you have any questions, feel free to send them in anytime. And I'd also like to tell you that you can also find the budget letter and the job aid on attached to today's Fiscal TV invite. To review, Budget Letter 20-12 and the related Fiscal job aid outline steps that all agencies and departments must take to track expenditures, obligations, receipts, and other transactions related to the state's response, mitigation, management, and recovery activities associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. This includes making lump sum adjustments in Fiscal for any current year expenditures incurred since the pandemic began. With us today is Jeff Caselli, Department of Finance, Partner Business Executive. Welcome, Jeff. And can you please bring us up to date with information regarding the budget letter?
Thanks, Jim. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Caselli. I'm the Department of Finance Partner Business Executive at Fiscal. California is expected to receive approximately $70 billion in federal stimulus funds. As such, my department released Budget Letter 20-12 about 2.5 weeks ago with specific instructions to how to track COVID-19 related awards and expenditures in Fiscal. In the budget letter, we have 3 distinct buckets: COVID-19 response, testing and contact tracing, and stimulus programs. It's very important to track this information as accurately as possible for a couple of different reasons. One, we should try to maximize the amount of federal reimbursement and offsets that California is entitled to receive. And two, it's important to track this information properly for auditing, reporting, and oversight purposes. My advice to departments with this budget letter is that it's very important to flag transactions early in the process as possible into the 3 distinct buckets. This will help minimize any reclassification work that may be necessary down the road. Now, in a couple of minutes, Charlene Finn will go through the job aid and give a demonstration using the project costing module. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to type them into the system and we'll answer them after the presentation as best as we can. If we cannot answer them, we'll get back to you after the presentation. Now, if you have specific questions related to your department's budget or appropriations, I'm asking that you contact your finance budget analyst for those questions. If you have specific questions about your department's accounting, I'm asking that you contact your FISCU analyst at finance. And finally, after this presentation, feel free to submit a ticket to the FSC if you have questions on the job aid or the project costing module in PeopleSoft. We have developed a COVID support ServiceNow group in FSC where we have many trained professionals available in that group to answer these type of questions, and the FSC knows to divert your questions to that group. So when you ask those questions, please make it clear it's related to either the budget letter or the project costing module related to the COVID-19 tracking. Back to you, Jim.
Thanks very much, Jeff. So we'd like to bring in Char Finn. She is with the Business Operations and Solutions Division, the Fiscal Service Center. And again, if you do have questions, feel free to type them in. If we can get to them and answer them, we will. If not, as always, we will make sure that those are taken care of a little bit down the road. So welcome, Char. Are you ready to take us through the job aid?
Okay, let's do this.
All right.
So, hey everybody, I am going to go straight forward to creating a project to show how to add a COVID-19 project attribute. Let's minimize these guys out of the way. So, the first step is to navigate to project costing general information. So we have this navigation main menu, project costing, project definitions, general information. If you do not have this navigation, you do not have any project costing roles. So our first step to creating our project is to click add a new value. You're going to enter your BU, and then you can leave the project ID for the next value to generate the next available project number, or you can enter a project ID manually following your department's naming conventions. A project ID has 15 characters. It must be a unique number BU-wide across all BUs, and then we recommend that you start with the BU, and it should not have any spaces or special characters other than a dash or an underscore. So when you arrive at this general information page, another of the many questions, a lot of people are seeing this page grayed out. If you are one of those people, then you do not have the PC processor role and you cannot create a project. So contact your manager to request the role. In this description chart field, it's a required chart field. You have up to 30 characters. It's very important because it travels with your project ID. So I would recommend that you include one of those 3 COVID values, one of those 3 buckets that Jeff talked about, into this description to help your users, but especially if you have multiple COVID projects. So as an example, this is going to be a stimulus. I knew I was going to do that. Stimulus programs for ABC or program. And my integration is my BU. The project type, primary project types can be your agency or federal or reimbursement or state grants. I'm going to select federal. And for my start date, you want to make sure that your start date is before any transactions take place. So I'm just going to go with March 1 as my start date. And I'm not sure what my end date will be, so I'll just pick a future date. You can come back and change these dates if necessary. So when I click Save, down here at the bottom, we are going to get the project activities hyperlink to populate. But because this is a federal project, we have an additional step. So when we save it, we are, as a federal project, we're brought to the user fields page where we have required fields. So you'll click OK to the message. And then you'll notice your CFDA, your PN, and your C. Those are required fields that you can find on your SCO Odd 10A. So you cannot leave these fields blank, so you must complete them. If you have both state ops and local assistance, you can put an M here instead of the category that's on your Odd 10A. Keep in mind that the system will not allow you to leave blanks in these chart fields. So when we click Save, we'll see that our project will update to the next available project, and we have our project activities hyperlink at the bottom. So we're going to give our activity name. You can name whatever is preferred by the department. This is a name that does allow spaces. The activity ID does not. I'm going to leave my activity as next and save. And of course, it'll be the number 1 for this project. So we're going to, got ahead of myself. So over here we have our activity definition. To the right, we're going to click on that to activate our activity. We're going to go to the bottom of this page to go to our activity status. And here is where we're going to activate it. It always gives the effective date of the date you're creating the project. So you want to make sure you change that effective date to the start date of your project. Your status, you'll want to select, you can type in A or you can select active from the list, and then you will click Save. From here, we're going to return to General Information, return to Project Activities, and now we're going to return to the Project General Information. So now we're going to navigate to our project attributes. That is clear over here to the right, so you'll click that little arrow, select the Project Attributes tab, and then at the bottom section of this tab is the Custom Attributes. From here, you're going to select the attribute name, which is COVID-19. And then you have the value drop down. This is your 3 buckets: response, stimulus programs, testing, and contact tracing. I'm going to select the stimulus program. And keep in mind that you can only have one of these in a project. So that is the one I have selected. We are saved. Now your project is ready to be used in other modules. Some words of wisdom: whenever you're in the other modules creating transactions, always make sure that you have your PC business unit in there keyed in first. Then you can select your project. And then your activity that I left at 1. And then you're ready to go. The project should only be used to track COVID-19 costs for that attribute value. So for mine, it was stimulus. Do not use this project for non-COVID-19 expenditures. If your department has multiple types of COVID-19 activities, then you will have to create multiple COVID-19 projects. And one other big important one that we're getting a lot of tickets on is on your federal projects. Last year, we had a task 939. And so this is the first time for many departments that they have to follow this process. This is a screen that came from that SEO presentation on the federal trust fund projects. And so please be sure when you have a federal project to add it to the tree, you need the approved Odd 10A from SEO. And that Odd 10A has to match the information that you keyed into your project. Make sure the CMR is submitted by your DAD, and we can get right on top of making sure those projects are added to the federal trust fund tree. And let us know if you have any questions. And that is how you create a project for COVID-19.
Okay, thank you very much. We do have some questions. And before we get to those questions, I'd like to let you know that besides Jeff and Shar, today we have Jay Profit, Accenture Accounting Director, Brandon Smith, Department of Finance, Fiscal Systems and Consulting Unit, and Nirav Shah, Project Costing SME. First question we have is we have received millions of dollars in federal COVID funding going back to March of this year. Yet the budget letter and job aid largely discuss attaching the COVID attributes to new projects. We need more guidance on attaching the attributes to existing. And I believe, Nirav, you said you could handle this question.
Yes. So if the department have received funding related to COVID-19 and if they have already created the projects, so first thing is they have to identify if that project are they going to use for stimulus funding, contact tracing, all of them, or is it specific to one particular funding? If the same project which you have established right now, it's being used across different types, then you have to create multiple projects, multiple federal projects, and create a FSC ticket to tag those child projects to the original project, the federal project. And if it's related to only specific attribute value, then you can go on and tag the attributes to that project, and all your transactions starting March will automatically come up as a COVID-19 transaction.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they would like to add to that answer? If not, doesn't look like we have any other questions here. Hold on. We're getting these questions in right now, so bear with us. And again, if we don't answer your question on today's show, we will get you the answer as soon as we can. Bear with us here while we have some questions coming in. Okay. So again, we do have a couple of questions here that we will, looks like we'll be able to answer offline away from the show. And I'm just going to wait here a minute just to see if we do get a few more in. Is there anything that anyone would like to add while we're waiting for questions? Okay, we have one here. Is every BU a federal project? I created the project, but did not add it as a federal. And Shar, you can take care of that?
Absolutely. So if you have federal appropriations, then you probably have a federal project. It depends upon where your COVID-19 expenditures are. So if they're in your general budget, you would use a different project type. So you could use your agency. You can use the agency. There's a couple others you can use. Reimbursement if you're seeking reimbursement. Agency is a nice safe one though for general fund tracking.
Okay. And again, if you have questions, feel free to send them in now. And I know I keep saying it, but if we don't answer your question, we will answer it offline. And we'll just wait a few minutes. Jeff, is there anything you would like to add at this point?
There are several questions that are coming in, Jim.
It looks to me as if those questions, unless somebody can jump on them to answer, we're going to more than likely answer offline. I do see 3 or 4, but I don't see any of our panel jumping in to take those. If there are any, feel free to take them.
Yeah, so one of the question is project attributes and value dropdowns are set up across all BUs. So yes, fiscal have set up the project attributes and the valid dropdown values for all the BUs.
Okay. Are there any other questions here that you want to take a stab at?
I have one that I can address. I think it's from Bo. It says, I want to know if setup is required for all departments as part of the statewide tracking, or is the project ID setup being done so departments can initially identify costs easily and then report out? So the answer to that one is this is a requirement for all departments to set up a project to track the COVID. And then the project ID and the activities associated with the setup are in the department's control to do how they feel necessary for their internal tracking, but it is a requirement for a statewide tracking and reporting purposes.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Shar, it looks like you have an answer. The question basically is, so we can have multiple activities for each project? I believe you addressed that already, but.
Yes, you can create as many activities you want on that project as long as that project only references that one bucket. So if you have multiple buckets, if you have both response and and your stimulus programs, then that requires 2 different projects. But if you want to create multiple activities in that project, feel free, have fun. But also keep in mind, if you already have a federal project, that you cannot create a stimulus activity in your federal project. You need to make sure you create that stimulus in any federal funds that you have earmarked for COVID-19. You need to make sure you create that project separate from your other federal projects.
Okay. And again, we do have some questions that are being answered privately. If it is a situation that the answer is, please contact your finance budget analyst, you will just receive that that answer, excuse me, now. Okay. Before we move on, are there any other questions that the panel wants to take here?
Sure, I have one, Jim. The question was, which fund can we use to record COVID stimulus programs? Is it a must record for federal funds, or is it okay to use general fund? So for all federal funds, the requirement is to use a project. And if the project is related to the COVID stimulus funds, then they need to tag that project appropriately with the right attribute. That does not mean that all COVID related expenses are federal funds, and other funds can be used also. So the project can be tracking not only federal funds, but also general funds or any other special funds the department may have.
Okay, thank you, Jay. And Shar, I believe, what about purchase orders already used for COVID purchases?
So I can't answer specifically on purchase orders because my favorite module is project costing. But if you've already had a PO expenditure, you can correct that by adding a project by doing NAP, by doing a journal voucher. So just know that you'll want to change all of those transactions. So if you have some transactions that have taken place, you want to correct those in the submodules as much as possible so that your GL and your submodules are all happy together.
Happy together. That sounds good. Sounds good. We have a few more. Any of you want to take a stab at any of those? And again, I just want to remind everybody that your questions will be answered. If they are not taken care of here, you will receive an answer. We are gathering all the questions.
Yes. One of the question was, what if our department already has existing projects established? Is it possible to create new activity IDs and only apply those attributes to those new activity IDs and not project as a whole? So it is very important to track those at the project level and not the activity level. So if you have a COVID project and you have multiple activities, and if you want to tag only a specific activity, then that's not the correct way. You have to create a new project and then reclassify all the transactions from the old project and activity to the new project.
Okay, and we have a request here. Could Shar please repeat what she said? Oops, sorry, we're getting some questions here, so it's moving around. Could Shar please repeat what she said about only one attribute per project? I'm not sure if I heard correctly.
That is correct. So in both the budget letter and in the job aid, there are 3 buckets of expenditures that are identified. I do not have them directly in front of me, but of those 3 buckets, you can only have a project identified to one of those buckets. So that's where I had that drop down. If I go back to that project, I can show you that. Nope, I can't. Anyway, when you're in that attribute and you select the first drop down that's COVID-19, that second drop down has the 3 items. You can only select one of those for that project. If you have expenses in 2 of those, then you have to create a separate project for that other bucket.
Okay, sounds good. And again, it looks like we are having some questions that are already being answered.
I'd like to answer the one that from someone that asks, the department does not have federal general funds and does not have any trouble with identifying COVID-19 expenses without the project IDs. Can the department use service location number to track the COVID-19 expenses? I'm answering it because it's a really easy answer. No, you have to have a COVID-19 project because there's statewide reporting that is relying upon those COVID-19 expenditures to hit those that project attribute.
Okay, there's actually a question here that I can answer. Is today's session being recorded and will it be available on YouTube? The answer to that is yes. It usually takes maybe a couple of days. You should see it early next week. And we do have another question, and I believe, Jay, you can take this one. The question, the department does not have any trouble with identifying the COVID-19 expenses without the project IDs. Can the department, oh, I'm sorry, that's service location numbers to track the COVID-19 expenses. I believe that's one we just did.
Correct. Sure already answered it. I just wanted to tag on to it that the departments can still utilize service locations and other chart fields to meet their internal needs for tracking. But like Shara said, it does need to be into a COVID project with that project attribute so we can track and pull information from a statewide tracking and monitoring reporting overall.
Thanks, Jay.
Okay.
So one more question was regarding the report, if there is any existing report for expenditures tagged to that attribute. So currently we don't have any report, but the work is in progress, and in next few weeks you should receive notification once that report is ready.
Okay. Thank you for that. And
Jim, there's a request for Shar to repeat her answer about the journal voucher to correct existing expenditures.
okay, Shar.
So if you've already had your expenditure, your PO and your SCO's already made payment, then you would make that correction just like other times. I know my team has done a lot of journal vouchers in its days. So you just create that journal voucher to replace, if there was a different project used, replace that project, or to just add the project into that that new transaction into that debit.
Okay, panel, any other questions you'd like to tackle before we close off here?
I just want to add one more thing. We do have a small document that gives you an outline of how you can reclass some of those transactions that may have already occurred, and we will be sharing that shortly.
All right, let's see. I think that's it for the questions as of now. We'd like to thank Jay and Brandon and Nirav and Jeff and Shar for being here to answer questions and to present the job aid. Jeff, before we leave, is there anything you'd like to say in wrapping up this segment?
No, I know we're out of time, but I wanted to thank everyone for their contributions. I thought this went well, and it'll be posted in a couple of days. We'll try to get all your questions answered as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for participating. Now we have a little bit of news for you. The Department of Fiscal opened a virtual command center this past Monday to handle customer service needs arising from the June 2020 State Controller's Office release. Its purpose is to provide enhanced support to departments for at least the next 3 months. For departments, we plan to support the newly deployed functionality from department support application enhancements, as well as impacts from the deployed functionality from M3 and M4. We will help all departments with fiscal year 19 year-end close, and we will offer remote user support labs and on-site support as needed. The Department of Fiscal will use the latest tools and technologies to provide the same service remotely that users and others expect from the command center. We plan to keep the command center open for at least 3 months, and will decide in September whether to keep it running longer. And here's a bit more news for users. It has become evident that department users spend a lot of time creating requisitions and purchase orders, mostly line by line. Users have identified the process as time-consuming. Users have described it as time-consuming and have requested a way to streamline data entry within the procurement modules. In response, DGS Procurement Division has partnered with Fiscal to help transform the user experience. Fiscal is partnering with the California Prison Industries Authority web store to develop an online web catalog that interfaces directly with the Fiscal system. The punch-out catalog functionality will allow Fiscal users to shop and submit CalPIA orders directly through the Fiscal requisition module. Using an Amazon-like shopping experience, users will have a seamless experience between product selection and purchase order creation. We are happy to announce this functionality is planned to go live in the fall. Look for joint communications from the DGS Procurement Division and Fiscal in the coming months. And I can also let you know that CalTv will be doing a segment on this. And I'd like to thank Jeff, Shar, Jay, Nirav, and Brandon for joining us today. If you have any further questions regarding the budget letter and job aid, you can always contact your relations coordinator and they will get you taken care of. I'd also like to thank you for watching us today and remind you to take the survey at the end of the show. And as I stated earlier in one of the questions, you can find this episode and all Fiscal TV episodes on our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Fiscal TV.